G'day, wholesome people. And thank you for listening in to episode 3, season 1, Finding the Real You. Hope you're having a truly wholesome morning, afternoon, evening, whether you're on the bus, getting some K's in on the treadmill, or relaxing on the couch. In this episode, I've had the opportunity to do a walk and talk out here in nature by the river in the mountains of Wales with my guest speaker, a true inspiration, idol, and just incredibly wholesome person in my life. Throughout this conversation, we're going to learn a bit about this wonderful person's life journey so far and their take on the pillars that guide our self-discovery and path through life. Justine Lobb, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute treat to be here and to be with you and to be given this opportunity to chat.
Wonderful. And of course, Justine has the same last name as me. She's my aunty.
Very proud of that.
Of course. But Justine is a true inspiration to me because she's an entrepreneur and has been for over 2 decades now.
Well, 3 actually.
Well, 3.
We're celebrating 31 years this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're a mum to 2 strapping young boys.
Indeed.
You're doing martial arts. You have been for so long. You're a singer. You're a surfer. What can I say? Who could have more wholesome life than what you're currently living?
Well, it's always been inspiring for me to connect with nature, and yeah, it's a really important thing for me to have balance. And gosh, that profile sounds quite impressive, actually.
You've got to give yourself some credit.
If I say so myself. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, I thought this would be a fantastic setting to have a really genuine and authentic chat. Something that we both love in nature, and just letting the information and the ideas flow. So yeah, really looking forward to this chat, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Me too. It's just wonderful to be here.
Yeah.
What an incredible place.
Oh yeah, super inspiring. So I wanted to start. Obviously, you are the owner, the entrepreneur, the success behind Wild Nature in the skincare and makeup industry. And so you spent 3 decades on that. What was the spark that first drew you to that path, as an entrepreneur, and from the context of what you wanted to do, your purpose in life, and how has your why evolved over the years?
Great questions. So as a founder, it's a pretty brave thing to do. And I'm going to speak as an observer of myself, because sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's difficult to really talk about what you've succeeded in without feeling a sense of arrogance. And I think it's wonderful to be able to observe oneself while participating. It's a theme that is very important in my life. I'm a twin. You have 2 aunties from the same birth. And to be honest, I actually think that I was really lucky because I come from quite an academic family. And right from the word go, balance, I see, was really important to me. I was academic, but I was also social. And finding that balance in an academic family is actually quite difficult because my parents weren't really sure what was going to happen to me. And they knew that I'd always be okay. I knew I'd always be okay.
Yeah.
So I went to uni, I worked for Procter & Gamble, and at the wise old age of 22, I decided that I had a really good grasp of what was required in a bureaucratic organisation. And Australia is one of the most incredible places to live, but to also thrive as an entrepreneur. Because in the worst case scenario, we had a social system that would support me. It was never my intention, but it comes to the root of being an entrepreneur is what's the downside? It's naive not to look at it and to put it in its place while you move forward. So I decided, why not give it a go? And I'm a saver. I had some financial backing for myself that I had made. So I've always been a worker. So I thought, let's do it. And what I think I knew at the time, but I definitely know now in hindsight, is that I absolutely love connecting with people. And I just needed to find something that would allow me to connect with people. So I knew I wanted to start my own business before I knew what the product and service was going to be. And then I went on the search to find what would allow me to connect with people to my best ability. So, of course, I did a little bit of traveling. And one of the things that I remember from my commerce degree was when you name your company, make it generic. There's a great example of the brothers who started making candles. And then when electricity came in, they couldn't make the conversion. Instead of light, they were the candle men. And so when I thought of the name Wild Nature, again, knowing I didn't know really what I was going to sell, I went, wow, I could be Wild Nature kayaking or Wild Nature skincare. So, and it really was a reflection of who I am. I love nature. I don't fit into a box, even though I look normal. My headspace is curious. And, these are all really common words now, authentic, curious, journey, all of those words. But, back in the early 90s, these were really embryonic words. And organics was really, the practice has been for thousands of years. But it was really only just coming to commercial world. It wasn't like we see it now. So there was a real curiosity to what I could do and, more importantly, how I could connect with people. And that's why. Because I think from a very early age, I have been a ball of energy and a ball of positive energy. And touching people in the skincare world, putting product on their skin that they will be putting on their skin every day, almost a mantra of positive energy. So it was absolutely perfect for me to go into skincare. I'd had a little bit of experience doing promotional work while I was at uni. So I got to see a whole range of different humans and connect with different humans. And I could connect even at that early age. So it was a really easy transition into that, knowing that failure's never really been a word in my vocabulary. I think if you attempt to do something to the best of your ability and it doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's just a redirection.
It's a lesson.
It's a lesson, absolutely. And so I never had that sense of failure. It was more a positive, let's give this a go.
Yeah. Wow. So impressive. Just going back to how it was a very embryonic word, like curiosity, entrepreneur, still was a new buzzword. It sounds like you were very much going against the grain in your circles, in your social circles, in your family life.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about that, because in this first season about, finding the real you, I think we're all hustling to try and work out who we are, but we get a lot of pushback and we seek a lot of validation from people. So talk to me a bit about the challenges that came up for you as you were going on your entrepreneur journey so early as well, age of 23.
Yeah. I think I ticked the boxes I needed to tick through high school, through uni. And I've always been, everyone's always known I was going to be okay. And that wasn't a mask or anything. I truly believe that I am a child of this universe without sounding, too Byron Bay, which is where our factory is. And it couples with what I was looking for, also with my martial art, which was coinciding at the time. We do this, I'm sort of jumping around a bit, but it all marries in. Entrepreneur, martial art, surfer. My name is Justine, which is justice, and my blood type is B positive. I mean, seriously. You cannot fight that.
Now that you've told me that makes sense.
Of course I'm B positive.
Yeah.
Like, how classic is that? I just went, okay, you can't fight this. So
yeah, every cell of your body.
I think that's really a big part of it. I was so going with my flow that nothing falls into place. Don't worry. I push for things that I believe in. But I felt like I was absolutely on the right path. And I think being given the fortune of being a twin, you're constantly fighting for your differentiation. Well, we certainly were. Being boxed in as twins, being called twins, gives you this innate sense that you want to be independent. So I think it gave me permission from a very early age. I know siblings get similar presents at Christmas, but we were lucky if we got a different coloured dress. Everything was the same. You didn't have to open Christmas presents because you knew if your sister had got that, you're just waiting for yours. So I think it really did give me permission to just not rebel. I'm not rebellious, but to stake my claim in this world as someone independent of others. And as a woman in my martial art, I'm constantly training young people, especially girls, that if you're born with a heartbeat, you stand independently. You're not just the sister, the daughter, the girlfriend, the wife, the niece. You actually have a right to stand independently. Oh, I'm getting emotional.
This is great.
You do. You have a right to stand there and to be interdependent. And that's a really strong word in my world because we all need each other. I'm incredibly community orientated. I'm a good friend and I have good friends. But to be able to stand and understand that you have your own independent thoughts, path, and you collect wonderful people along the way, etc., I think is a really profound space to be in at such a young age. And I think it comes down to a little bit of family experience, but certainly as a twin, you claim. I remember in first grade going to a new school and the principal said, "Would you like to be in the same class?" Now, we were young for our years, so we were just 5. And I remember to this day saying no.
Wow. That's really inspiring and impressive that you've seen the twin, relationship in a positive light, in a way, in a constructive light to actually be different. Because I feel like a lot of twins would feel the need to be the same all the time around each other. So the fact that you've recognized that from the very beginning is just sort of put you on this path of,
Hadn't really thought about that before you just asked me how important of an impact that had. I obviously have reflected on being a twin, but not in this context.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that actually segues quite well into the next question about, you mentioned your martial arts and how that relates into you being an entrepreneur. So balance seems to be obviously at the core of your identity and your lifestyle, being a successful businesswoman, a martial artist, a surfer, a singer, and a mum. Like, wow. Life goals. What have you learned about the role of rhythm and flow in creating that balance and the connection between those aspects of your life?
Great question. So I'm a really active person, always have been. I followed your father my brother around like a bad smell when I was a kid. And I remember one day when I was about 22, we hadn't started Wild Nature yet, and we went camping with some friends. And I love to dance, but I don't like dancing in front of other people because I get shy. And we never did ballet or anything like that. And I saw this guy who was camping with us, and he was second Dan Taekwondo black belt. And I said, "Show me a kick." And he did this turning high kick and just touched my forehead with his foot, which I loved. I just went crazy. And I tried to do it and did it straight away because I'm relatively flexible. And I thought, I have found my dance. So it's interesting at this time in our history, martial arts is so constantly marketed as defend your child against bullying, etc., etc. Which to me, there is a place for, of course, but it's marketed quite in my view, it's marketed quite dramatically as a defense against danger, which it is, but it is so much more than that. And the thing that I absolutely loved, I had a female instructor, which wasn't necessary, but amazing. And what I learned was empowerment, not against anybody else, but an internal power, not to overpower, very different, just an internal flame inside of me that gave me a sense of being and a sense of wonder, because what I like to train in my martial art is when I'm teaching kids, I always say it's like a rainbow. And at the end of the rainbow, there can be a little bit of cloud, but most of the rainbow are incredible colours. And it also reflects on peripheral vision as well. So I think it's really important to understand that it's important to defend and be able to defend yourself, which, by the way, starts well before you're in a situation where you actually have to defend yourself physically. But it also implants this concept that life is absolutely beautiful. We can't forget that. Most people live an incredible life, especially in Australia, but in most parts of the world, we have so much beauty around us that it's important to market beauty and love and curiosity and delight and nature and all of those things, but also be aware of looking after yourself.
Yeah, I would never think that martial arts could teach you something about life. Like, as you said, it's sort of has this dogma around it that, oh, yep, I've got to become a man, or I've got to become a more macho woman to protect myself because there are bad people out there. But really, it's actually appreciating the positive side of the world and moving your body intentionally.
Absolutely. You know, there is obviously a place where someone has been in a situation and they now need to be able to regain confidence to walk around. You know, I'm not naive to the grey of our world, but I'm certainly not an advocate for making that the mainstream thought. And it's very easy. It's so easy to create fear. It's hard work to create a beautiful world, but it's so incredibly satisfying to do that. And it's a conscious decision that we have to make every day. How do I see this? Even things that happen to you that you wish hadn't. Do you stay in that space, or do you acknowledge it and then move forward? And I love using this analogy. As you know, I love analogies. I used to do we used to spearfish a lot in our 20s, Rick and I. And my friends would say to me, "Wow, how do you do that? Aren't you scared?" And I would say, "You know what? There is a fine line between what I do and many others don't. I feel the energy. It's there. But instead of pushing me back, it pushes me forward. It's how I perceive it. I don't create fear in my body. I use that energy, that whatever's going on in there, to move me forward. And that's the only difference. It really is. It's as simple as that.
Powerful. And you do, Hapkido, martial arts, making the link between martial arts and the business world and wild nature. Are there any techniques that you've taken on from Hapkido and just naturally applied straight away into a situation, like negative or positive?
So I love kicking. It's my favorite. I love sparring. I love kicking. I love attacking in a very respectful way, and no one ever gets hurt because we're actually not a contact art, which is also really interesting. So when we're looking at martial arts, it's always, if I was to say anything, it's always important to see how the instructor is and to see how much ego is involved, because that can, like any corporation, can really determine the culture of the club or the corporation. So that's my first thing that I'd say. For me personally, I'm quite dynamic. What I learnt with my martial art, and my instructor would always laugh, he would say, breathe. Because I'd just go in without breath and we'd be doing self-defense and I'd be bang, bang. And, you don't want to spar or work with someone who's like that. So for me, what I learned more than anything was to know when to be dynamic and to know when to breathe. And that's one of the big lessons I learned from my martial art. The other thing that I also learned, which I love and I teach my boys all the time, or remind them, more to the point, is if you can master the art of switching on, then wow. So my boys would always say, gosh, you guys goof around so much before class. And then as soon as the instructor claps, you bang, you switch on. And I said, absolutely, because we know when we can do the relaxation, the cool, the calm, the joy, etc., the mucking around. But as soon as we're needed, and this is very parallel to any business, you know when to switch on.
It's kind of like, this is a different sort of mantra that you normally hear in the corporate world is like, work hard, play hard. That can be taken in certain, connotations and contexts, but essentially the same concept behind it's we know when to work and we know when to have fun and play around, because that balance is essential. Otherwise you'll just end up burning out, right?
Absolutely. And remember, in this context, these are the same people who I'm going to be doing self-defense with. We're going to be kicking. So there is rapport required. This is a team situation. I mean, it really is an example of a family dynamic, a corporation, anywhere, a community, where a community is required. There's time to play, there's time to relax, there's time to chat, and then there's time to roll your sleeves up and get the job done. And my martial art has definitely taught me that. I think most sports can teach you that if you're in a team situation. I just know from my own experience that martial art is so dynamic in that way. And you can really hurt people if you're not conscious and responsible. And they're your friends. They're not just an opponent from another team, which is also very important to consider.
Of course.
The other thing that I really want to mention, which I love, and I use this often in life in general, we do this fantastic exercise where you stand in the middle and you have all your attackers around you. And as you get higher up in your Dan black belts, will go in pretty hard, which is great because that's what you're expecting. But the whole idea is to have an attacker come at you, do your self-defense, and then reclaim your space. So they may have dragged you away from your center, but it's up to you to bring yourself back, to calm yourself down, ready for the next attack. Now, as you become higher up in the belts, there's no breath between the next attacker. Often they're waiting behind you to grab you. So that can be a split second. In a bigger picture, it teaches us, whether we're talking about being in a corporate world or in a family or any situation. An easy example is you might not like Indian food, for example. Someone invites you to go to an Indian restaurant. Now, you can say no, or you can say yes. You can be curious and you can go and try it and then come back to your center and say, I've tried it, but actually it's not for me. So you're always coming back to your own thoughts, which is what I think that this exercise really shows you. So you can be dragged off in different directions in life, but there's always important to stop and think, is this me? Or am I being led, and do I want to be led? Because sometimes we want to be led. Even the best leaders in the world don't mind being led every so often. So that's a really important one that I learned most definitely. Breathing is something that I'm absolutely loving. I'm having a bit of a romance with myself at the moment, and I'm enjoying what my body can do. You know, at 54, I just feel like I'm still on the bell curve going up. And I might be delusional, but that's how I feel. But I've got so much more into my yoga, which is teaching me, so many lessons. I now go to my vinyasa class looking forward to Shavasana, which I couldn't even remember the word. I was so disconnected with Shavasana. I'm not going to define it because I don't want to get it wrong. But to me, what it means is just that ultimate rest, conscious rest.
Normally at the end of the session, isn't it?
At the end of the session. So the session it's hot flow, it's challenging, it's holding a position. This is so reflective of any other part of your world. You know, I love instant gratification, the high spinning hook kick in Hapkido, bang. Now I'm going into holding a position, using different muscles, the psychological calm breathing. It's the complete circle. And then when you've exerted all of that energy, rest. Wow. So I'm actually at 54 teaching myself through my practice of yoga, retraining my brain to connect rest and its importance without just going to sleep. That is such a huge lesson.
Kind of like intentional napping.
Exactly. Well, intentional rest. Just being still, giving your body a chance to acknowledge that it is under pressure, that it is dynamic. But just as importantly, rest is essential at any age. And I feel so lucky that my best friend in me is acknowledging the importance of it and practicing it 3 or 4 times a week. Wow. Even just planting my feet in the shower, not being on my sort of the pads of my feet, ready for action, just feeling the depth of calm with every part of your foot, the sole of your foot. Oh, beautiful. Actually being planted on the earth. So simple and yet incredible.
I love that. And I think more than ever in this day and age where technology, social media, our busy lives, we can do so many more things now. And having that awareness, especially from at the earliest age you can possible, to have that awareness, because our current world does make that difficult.
It does.
And we have drawn in so many different directions from a mental standpoint, but also a physical standpoint across time and space. And so I love that you intentionally are able to exude that 4 times a week.
Oh,
That's got to be the dream.
it really is. It's the last part of me building the foundations of what I see as the complete me. We're always learning. Gosh, we'll never stop learning. What would it be to not learn? But to have such a understanding of yourself and to really get to know yourself and who you are is profound.
Switching gears a little bit, in a world that often rewards a lot of hard work and a lot of hustling, how have you been able to protect your own creativity and curiosity? You mentioned earlier you've been a child of this universe ever since you came alive. How have you leveraged your curiosity and creativity to find, your evolving self in business, in your relationship, as a mother, in all those aspects?
Good question again. So the business that I went into in organic skincare, hair care and makeup, that was a very important part of me finding balance, because I knew we started at markets. So the same woman or man who would walk into a department store would walk into a market, hear the same professional voice, but be open. And what I got was not the woman who, or the man who was 1 hour in the city, really busy, answers, answers, answers. I planted myself in a space where I could get the best out of humans and give my best to them. And that was so important, and make money, because we live in an economic world. There's no point having a dream or having a purpose if you can't financially support yourself. That doesn't make sense, because we live in an economic world. And I often say this to new distributors, or really to anyone who'll listen. You're no good if you can't support yourself. You want to have a voice. And in most situations, that means some level of economic success. It's part and parcel. So don't delude ourselves that that's not important. So it was really important for me to make money doing something that I believed in, but the core purpose was to connect with people and basically give them a mantra that nature, calm, process, not just grabbing the next thing that came onto the market, was really important. And defining family values, honesty, trust. You can trust that the product's going to be there when you expect it. You can trust that the recipes haven't changed for 31 years. You can trust that you can speak to me at any time you want to. That's my job. Me becoming more successful doesn't mean that I become detached. And I think that's a really important message to get across. I still have about 150 customers that I deeply care for a number of reasons. I want to be able to practice what I want my people to practice. I want to see what's working, what's trending, etc. I can get myself out of most situations. So it's a playful exercise.
Hello.
But it also keeps me connected with my team, my customers, what has been, what is now, and what will be. And that's incredibly important, I think, for any corporation.
I love hearing about the philosophy behind wild nature and being, you mentioned practicing what you preach. If you're able to do that and express your curiosity and the creativity behind it, the philosophy, it rubs off people naturally.
Completely.
And the money just flows.
And it's, whenever I'm training, I always say, if you lead with your heart and you lead with integrity, you will make 3 times the amount that you need. So again, there's no price value. The value is in you. And I talk a lot about intuitive beauty. one thing I learned very early on when I was doing promotional work was that every customer that left that department store, to some degree, was dependent on going back to that counter. Instead of filling their cup so much that they want to come back. Huge difference, just a little word that makes just such a difference in people's lives. I don't want anyone to really be dependent on me except emotionally my children. That's pretty well, obviously, family as well. I want them to come to me and ask for advice. I don't always practice it. I'm really trying. I'm still as I say, I'm an experiment in motion is really my philosophy of life.
I love that. Intuitive beauty. That has a good ring to it.
Yeah, thank you.
And that also just reminded me of the fear-based selling that you mentioned yesterday. You know, people are being dependent, but in the context of fear.
Absolutely.
And I think fear can be a good thing.
Yeah.
And we should certainly embrace fear and learn how to react to fear. And, you know, you obviously have many techniques that you've learned in Hapkido and throughout life. Can you share the story about the marketing?
So this would have been probably 25 years ago. I was working with a new distributor. Actually, she hadn't joined. She said to me, I've been told that the only way I can sell is fear-based marketing. And I looked at her and I went, wow, is that what's being taught now? And obviously I would have done more research to see that, but that was her message. And I was quick to acknowledge it, because it's true. There's a lot of people who will say when they're selling to you, you're getting old, you need to do something with those wrinkles, you better buy this, otherwise your husband's going to leave you. You know, it's awful. So awful. If we appreciate age, we know that once you get to a certain age, you're going to see defining lines. But it's about the perception of what we see those lines as. We should look after our skin. Absolutely. No question about it. It's important to put something on your skin that is going to work with your system rather than attack it, etc., because that is a philosophy in itself. You know, I'm going to attack my body rather than work with it. But there's also an acceptance, which is the truth, it's the reality, that unless you're doing something damaging, but I actually have no judgment, because what I see there is a value system that I don't really connect with, but I appreciate it. We live in a very powerful marketing world. But fear has no place with aging and skincare. It should be just a very natural, let's look after our skin to the best of our ability. When I'm selling to people, I give them 5 seconds to look in that mirror. And I say to them, you have 5 seconds to look in the mirror, because if you look any further, you start to see your flaws. And this space has no space for that. And immediately it's just overriding that very natural, oh, I look terrible. and there's no space for that.
Wow. Can you tell me a bit about how you've implemented that in your life and how it's really benefited you in your confidence, you know, in your goals that you're trying to achieve, whether it be in business or martial arts or in singing, or how have you used that technique, which you give so generously to your customers, and how do you use that and leverage that in your life?
I think I go internal, and I feed myself with love and appreciation. And it's just thinking, wow, you're 54, you still have curiosity, you still have hope. Those words are really strong in my vocabulary. And there are levels of acceptance. You know, I accept I won't have a little girl. I've got 2 boys and 2 female animals, so I'm compensating. Those sort of things. I accept that. That's not a big one, but I think it's also just keep refining what your values are. You'll have moments in life when, and I'm a real gut person. One of the things that I also have learnt very much, that as a female especially, we live a lot on intuition. So it feels right or it feels wrong. I always have this question about what intuition is. Is it a collective experience that then becomes subconscious and therefore is intuitive? I'm not sure. I'd love the answer to that. But what I do find is intuitively I know if it's right or wrong or how I'm feeling. And then often in our society, it's taken over by the head, which is very much, I don't mean this as in gender, but the masculine side of thinking.
The
logical side, which says, prove it, otherwise it doesn't exist. Prove it. Prove why you feel like that. And often that is impossible to articulate. But does that make it wrong? So I've spent a lot of time really respecting and trusting my gut and listening to what my head says, of course, but then going, okay, where does that sit in the decision of how I feel? And I think I had an incredible experience with my son when he was about 12, and he was really upset about a situation. And I said to him, instead of saying, oh, don't be silly, which is a really common thing for a parent to say because we don't want our children to be hurt or feel hurt, I honoured what he was feeling. We talked about it. And then the next thing he said was, okay, can we go and watch television? So I thought, wow, in that moment, I have changed the course of that child in the way I parent. I acknowledge the feeling rather than spending often a lifetime trying to get back the trust in ourselves because it was taken away from us as a kid. Does that resonate with you?
100%. Totally. It's almost putting some more independence very early on.
Absolutely.
And being able to actually deal with things yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I heard this older gentleman who was being interviewed about, his regrets in life and the biggest lessons that he learned. And one of the most powerful examples that he gave that really resonated with me was teaching kids to fix their own problems from the earliest stage of even just 5 years old. He gave the example of his son who was riding his bike and the chain came off or something went wrong with it. And his son came up to him and said, Daddy, 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 in tears saying, my bike's broken. I don't know. Help me, help me. And he just said, oh, that's no good. Why don't you try and fix it? See what's wrong with it. And he purposely did not go and fix that because it's so easy to just get into that parent mode of that, almost a helicopter parent mode of, oh, it's okay, I'll fix it for you.
Yeah.
I'll go and you'll be happy and I won't have to listen to you screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned around 20 minutes later and he was on his bike.
Wow.
He'd fixed it.
That's so good.
Because his father had given him the space to acknowledge that problem, maybe cry a bit because you're a child and you do that, right? You're unhappy. You don't know, you're not in touch with your emotions yet.
Yeah.
But giving them the space and the independence to just feel around.
Completely.
And fix the problem themselves.
And on that note, I think it's really important to give yourself space to grieve a situation, to go, poor me, oh, poor me, but then collect yourself. To suppress that natural instinct really I think is really important because we're not machines, emotional machines. But I think it's really important not to keep yourself in that space. And that could be going for a walk, balancing the head with the body. And I think that's, for me, is the balance. I'm physical and academic or mindful. And I think that we are always learning. We should be always using our brain, but it should always go hand in hand with the body. And for kids especially, they learn so much through physical activity. That's their language at a young age. They fall down, they look at their mum or dad. Their mum or dad gives them an expression of shock, they cry. Or they fall down, they look at mum and dad. There's empathy there. But then there's, okay, are you okay? Dust yourself off. Come on, get up there, young man or young lady. And that's the interdependence.
Totally. So you've recently started a new venture, if I can mention it.
Yeah, of course, please.
The Honest Mentor. We were talking about it last night.
Yes.
Sounds amazing. What advice do you find yourself giving most often about balance, purpose, and also being able to grow a business?
Yeah.
It interrelates.
There's so many answers to what you just asked. I think it's important to be really clear on what your purpose is. Going into your own business or starting your own business is really brave. Depending on the age, if you've got a family, there's a lot of responsibility there. I was really fortunate when I started my business. I was 24 and I had absolutely no responsibility. I had no expectations on me. As I said, everyone knew I'd be okay. So I didn't see it as something that was brave. So I think it's really important to assess your situation, to look at the downside. What's the worst case scenario? Because you wouldn't be having these thoughts unless you were thinking of what could happen. And I think that that's just sensible. And I think that there is always a necessity to have curiosity and excitement and the wow factor. But I think there's also a lot of space for the sensible person as well. And developing that side of you, I think, is just as important as developing the muscles that you're trying to build through the exercise that you're doing or anything of that nature. I think it's really important, especially if you're doing it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I think the purpose is not the doing. They're the collective. The purpose is as simple as mine. My job is to produce as much positive energy into the world as possible. And that starts with me. If I'm not in that space, how could I possibly provide that to others around me?
Mm.
And I really do believe that that is my purpose in life, is just to inject as much positive energy into the world as I can. And so everything that I do every day is for that purpose. It can be as simple as getting a coffee in the morning and saying thank you, even if I'm in a rush. How do I want to leave that person? And I have in my thoughts, I want to leave people better than they were before they met me. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. Whether that's, wow, I have hope in humanity. That person said those jeans look good on me, and they actually looked at me when they said it. It can be that simple.
Not just to say it out of the...
Not just to say it or not just to think it. And I was listening to your previous podcast, which I love, by the way. I love your podcast. And then I went off to some of the books that you referred to. And that 1% really resonated with me. Every day, just 1% more of what you want to do. It doesn't have to be these grand activities of incredible result. It can be as simple as a thank you or a nice gesture. For me, that's really important.
I love that so much. And we all are craving purpose.
Mm.
Can you think back to your early years in starting your career, becoming, in your 20s, for example? Can you think back, and are there any sort of ways that you used techniques, whether it was like with a journal or setting like sticky notes on your fridge or something, to remind yourself to express your purpose throughout each and every day? Or did it come naturally?
I think I was really born to be a positive light in people's world. I can't consciously remember thinking that, but I know that the path that I took was based on that philosophy. And it's a two-way situation. I enjoy the response I get. So that probably comes from childhood. If I can't remember doing this, but perhaps if I did this, if I did A, then B would happen. I love maths. I've always loved seeing patterns. So that was, instead of like a goldfish, every time something would happen, go, wow, that's a new experience. Just observing, and I love observing human nature. So I think I suppose I wanted to please, and then I saw the results of pleasing, and it felt good for everyone. So it became very easy for me just to do things that would amplify that.
Yeah, so powerful. You mentioned you want to leave people in a better version of themselves after interacting with them. And I think that's very, what's the word? Admirable. And almost, chivalrous to have the humility to give people feedback. Because we were talking about this last night. If you don't every interaction you have with someone, whether it be positive or negative, it's important to give people a feedback board.
Very much.
A sounding board. Doesn't matter who they are. It could be a really small interaction at a coffee shop, a neighbor who's done you wrong. It's so important to give people feedback on how they're interacting, how they're living their life, because if they don't, the cycles continue and they pass it on to their children and they pass it on to their children. And so we have this cycle of negativity without telling each other.
Or positivity.
Yeah. And
because the feedback,
as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know you're not just talking about the negative feedback.
Yeah. And the positive is just as important.
Yeah.
For sure. But because in the end, we are all reflections of each other.
Completely.
And so whilst it might not be too obvious, and it might not be obvious for all, because we're all to some level or degree in tune with that awareness of being a reflection of others.
Very much.
But it's so important to teach people to give that feedback.
And to practice it. Again, what do we all do? What do most of us do every day? We get a coffee. I like to use examples that everyone can resonate with. I will sometimes walk out of a coffee shop and taste it and then go back in and say, that is a good coffee. Or just simply, thanks, that's such a delicious coffee. And what happens in that exchange is dynamic. I know that it was a good coffee, so I'm not making it up. I'm being truthful. I'm not just patronizing someone, which is really important for me. But I also know, as a mentor, as someone who's, the head of a corporation, how important it is to say thank you and to appreciate partnerships. So a classic example, when I'm at the factory and it's a busy day, if I want a cup of tea, I will ask everyone else, who wants a cup of tea? And then everyone will say, no, it's okay, thank you. And I go, are you guys being polite? Because there's no space for that here. I respect, and everyone knows that we all respect each other. Who wants a cup of tea? And the next thing, there's two people who want a cup of tea. Yeah. So it's about really appreciating every exchange that you have, because that's what it is to be human. As you said it beautifully. We're mirroring each other, we're reflecting each other. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't just see yourself. You see who you'd like to be, who you don't want to be, in that same mirror, even though only you are standing there. We are not individuals independent of each other, whether we like it or not. So to acknowledge that and to appreciate that, and to really appreciate it, what does it take to be like that? What does it really take to be like that? Rather than, she comes from a wealthy family. Of course, that could be the case. But is that where you stop? Is that where that story stops? Or can you be truthful about where you are and what you have to contribute, interdependent of others around you, standing on your own 2 feet with your own heartbeat, independent of others, but collectively interdependent? And I think compromise is a big word. Everything has a compromise. If you are successful as an entrepreneur, be mindful of what that compromises. And it might be as simple as spending so much time away from home that you may lose it. That's a reality. Couples that go into business, I think it's 70% the business succeeds and the marriage fails. There's some fantastic, sadly, statistics that show the compromise of success or failure. So checking in on yourself is absolutely imperative. And I love I've got an analogy that I've used from a very young age. I feel like I'm one of those circus masters who has the plates spinning. I'd love one of your listeners to do the research on this, because I'm sure there can only be a certain amount of plates that can spin, even with the best ability of balancing them all. And that's how I feel. I've got my family responsibilities, my business responsibilities, my personal responsibilities, what I want to do with my life, and I'm spinning them all. But I'm really conscious that if I don't spin one, it can fall. And was it worth it? So I think it's always really be aware of the compromises that you're making with decisions in life.
I was introduced that quite recently, that concept of the wheel of life, which you so beautifully described in an analogy of the spinning plates.
Yes.
Because I have a life coach who just sat me down and got me to do an exercise of going through the wheel of life. And it's essentially seeing all those spinning plates that you mentioned, your relationships, your finances, your personal growth, your creativity, your interests, and seeing them all in front of you on a piece of paper as a wheel. And then having the confidence and the courage and the self-inquiry to rate those plates out of 10.
Wow. Great exercise.
Just as a reflection. And what that immediately does is puts it all on one page, and you're able to see, okay, I rated this a 5. This is actually where I need to focus more of my energy and my time, because I'll lose it.
Absolutely.
That's all we're going to do that once. But what I've learned is to do that regularly, so that you're actually able to physically see those spinning plates every quarter, if you're in business, twice a year, yearly, just so that you don't let one of those plates drop and smash. And so I resonate with that a lot, the spinning plates. I love it.
I would say that those plates are in my vortex every day. When I look at my day, I think, right, I used to listen when I was on the way. I like to go to the beach first thing in the morning. I have a responsibility to my dog before myself. So I would wake up and I wanted to leave my boys. I actually get really anxious watching my boys get ready in the morning. So I acknowledge that me yelling at the beginning of the morning is not good for anybody.
Including the dog.
Including the dog. So I decided to remove myself from that situation when they got to a certain age and let them get themselves ready. And that was one less stress. But I would leave them with breakfast and a little note, which made me feel like I'd contributed to their morning without actually being there. So I love doing that pretty well every morning. Sometimes I use the same note, maybe just add a little bit so it looks like a new note, if I'm completely honest.
Fantastic.
But then even that, when I think that's been used and overused, I'll write a new one. So I'm thinking about my responsibility to my children, my responsibility to myself to be a mum, with individual expectations of what my life wants to be, interdependent of my children. So I leave the house, I drive, and I used to listen to the news. Now, this is at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. And to be honest, that cannot be my highlight. That cannot be the start of my day. That's not right. I actually don't think it's right for anybody, but especially when my purpose is to create positivity in the world, if I'm being slaughtered in my heart from all the devastation that humans can put upon themselves, different name, different country, same thing. It was being done in the 50s, in the 1800s. It's just a different face and a different name. So I decided not to listen to the news, and I just listened to a podcast or music or ring someone overseas, depending on where I am.
Yeah.
And then I'd get to the beach. I wouldn't take my phone with me on the beach, which is big for me. And
Well done.
I know it's, that's that 1%, that little thing each day. Take Tani for a run. We live in a safe area. So I'd put her in the car with the boot down and then I'd go for a surf. So that's the physical side of me, but the ocean, oh my gosh, we haven't even talked about the ocean. Wow.
That actually leads into my next question. Very good segue. Walking out here in nature.
Yeah.
And obviously the ocean back home in Sydney, in Australia, where we've both grown up.
Yeah.
And also just being here in the mountains by the trees and the river running and the sheep back there. What does nature bring up for you? Are there any life lessons, the wild has taught you that carries into your everyday world? I know wild nature is probably going to be part of it. I know you're going to say that.
Well, it was well named.
Yeah, it certainly was. And what does nature bring up for you, and what lessons have you learned?
My home is nature. Walls, I can live in walls. There's no problem with that. But when I'm in nature, whether it's in the ocean or in the mountains or anything, to be honest, I feel so much more in tune with who I am than anywhere else. And I'd never really seen snow until I was in my 20s. And I used to love, and I still do, I love being the last off the mountain because I feel completely encompassed by nature. It's wild, the ocean, if I'm out, sometimes I'm surfing bigger waves and which can be really scary for some people, and I get that. But for me, I just feel completely like there is something more powerful than myself, which is humbling. It teaches me everything. I've got a great example of when I was in my 20s, I started surfing and I caught this awesome wave and I was paddling back to the spot where I got the wave. And I'm pretty strong. So I was paddling back using all my gusto and I looked behind me and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was relatively new to the ocean. I was just getting to understand it, which is an incredible experience. Getting to know the ocean and really valuing it is honestly, it's a life journey. But I wasn't getting any further away and I was actually getting really close to some rocks. It was a pretty wild place. So my natural response to that was to paddle harder. Ego.
Against the grain.
Against it. I can do this. I'm strong. But I wasn't getting any further away. And as soon as I stopped and thought about it and realized that I can't fight it, it took me to safety. Oh, honestly.
Going with the flow, right?
Going with the flow, but also appreciating that I am such a small speck in this whole universe. And I certainly pack a punch, not literally, but well, I suppose I could if I wanted to. But it's so humbling and so wonderful to feel that you are part of something greater than yourself. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. But when you're pushing all the time, I'm pushing to get a car park out the front. I'm pushing 2 children around. I'm looking after people in my corporation. I'm a good friend. I'm a good daughter. Hopefully I'm a good mother. I think I'm a good mother. All of those things. Someone needs to nurture me. And yes, that comes in place with other humans, of course. But nature for me is the thing that nurtures me and challenges me and teaches me so much about who I am and my place in this world.
Fantastic. I resonate with that a lot, actually, going with the flow in nature, and just recently moving to Wales, being by the river out the back, and just having the time and space to just sit there and watch, which I imagine you've done quite a lot, having been in the surf, waiting for a wave.
Very much.
Over the years in the ocean. But the river and nature can teach us so many things in so many different ways. I found myself on the bridge, actually most days,
Nice.
just because I absolutely love the sound of running water.
Me too.
And just looking at the sheer power and never-ending flow of the river. Like, that is one spectacle and one wonder in our world that once you sit there for a while, you just think, wow, how can something just continue forever? Obviously, rivers dry up sometimes, but
sure,
just days after weeks. And I was looking at a rock, and I was watching the water flow towards the rock and just come around it either side. And it made me think about going with the flow in life and how we are just a droplet of water, and a droplet of water doesn't wait in front of the rock. Say, move out of the way. I'm coming down here.
Exactly.
Get out of my way.
Or do I have permission to go forward?
Yeah.
Just as much.
Tell me when.
Yeah.
The water simply just slides around the rock and continues on down the stream.
The line of least resistance.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly.
I was just blown away by that. Just being able to sit there and watch the river. But yeah, it resonates so much. We can learn so much from nature, and people, all of us came from nature. And so we definitely, I think, need to spend more time doing this, walking and be intentional about it, and try and do it at least 4 times a week. I don't know if you believe that.
I agree. I think we learn so much. We also learn about ourselves, our ability, where we are, where we could be. I think we were talking last night, and again, another amazing analogy of life is I've often watched people and thought, okay, I've assessed the situation, whether it's in business or life, and I've thought, can I do that? There's no reason why I've never said, can I do that? I've looked at it and I've thought, I can do that. I might do it differently, but I'm going to jump off those rocks, and I assess the situation, and I am prepared to get some scrapes and some bruises. I'm 100% prepared. Not prepared to die, but absolutely, my board could get broken. I could get scraped. I've seen people get scraped, but it's not going to stop me because I know myself. I know my ability, and I trust myself. They're really important ambitions for yourself, I think, is to get to know yourself, enjoy yourself. When I started yoga, I was seriously having a love affair with my body. I know that sounds bad, but what I meant by that was I was constantly in love with the movement and the love of moving. And it was just a joy. So getting to know your body as something that is part of you rather than an independent thing that you look at in the mirror is so important, especially as we get older. There's a lot of 50 plus people walking around who've forgotten that they own a body, and they think that that's okay. And it's not a pride thing. It's if you don't look after your body, then your mind won't be worth anything. They have to work together.
Definitely. Coming up to the end of the episode, I've got some bonus wrap-up questions if you're keen.
Absolutely.
What's your number one guilty pleasure?
Oh, gosh. I love to go out dancing and come home at 5 a.m. in the morning. I can't help myself. It doesn't happen very often, but I get completely swept away with the music and being out and being a bit rebellious, and I don't care where it is or who's around me or how old they are. And I think Guilt is not really a word I use, but I know what you're saying. And I think, yeah, that's probably not what a lot of 54-year-olds are doing. Well, not in
Definitely.
Australia anyway.
I love that.
And it
It's
is,
important to have the fun.
oh,
Yeah.
it's so much fun with good friends or just, you always meet people.
Yeah.
That's probably my most guilty pleasure.
Excellent.
Hmm.
One book that changed your life.
Hmm. It would definitely be, there's a few, but I think The Road Less Travelled is an incredible book. And it is a book that's based on an awareness of the anxiety of our community and how we can emotionally deal with that. And it had an incredible impact on a generation. And I believe that it's 25 years anniversary, maybe a few years back. So it's been going for a long time and every lesson is still very current.
Awesome. The biggest life lesson you've learned to date.
So I thought about this for quite some time because it's funny, you think there's so many lessons, but I think the biggest life lesson that I've learned is that we're responsible for our own happiness and that our mindset actually shapes our reality.
So powerful and so relevant. Can resonate with that.
Yeah, it's a good one because it transcends into everything.
Definitely. Where can people reach out to you and follow you on your journey? I know you've just released or you're working on building the Honest Mentor, which is a new avenue
It is.
of your business world.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us where people can find you and what's happening and where we can see all that happen.
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn and that's probably the best direct contact. And I really encourage anyone to reach out. I obviously come with a lot of experience, but I also, I feel I'm part of a strong community of like-minded people and resourceful people. And it does take a community to create a magical world.
Well, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure this has been to get some wisdom and knowledge from someone so close to me and an inspiration to me in everything that you do. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I'm so glad we could take this opportunity and wishing you all the best.
Thank you. You're very special to me, young man. And I know you are with your listeners as well.
I hope that something in this episode resonated with you today. And if you liked what you heard, or you know someone in your circle who could really benefit or be motivated, please give this episode a share by clicking the share button and send it via a direct message on Instagram or on your story to your close friends. Click the follow button if you want to hear more episodes like this. This will really help me share the love and wisdom to the world about taking control of our health and well-being collectively. I also really want to hear what you have to say about this episode and what you want to hear more of in the future. So please leave a comment on this episode. Whatever you've got to say, I want to hear it. So thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for listening. And that's it for now. Stay wholesome. See you soon.